The quantum resonance dampeners hummed with a low, nearly imperceptible frequency as the Nix Consortium's strike team made their final approach. Crossroads Station's massive silhouette loomed against the starfield, a labyrinthine construct of metal and light that served as the galaxy's most important diplomatic and trade nexus. Dr. Arya Nakamura noticed the first anomaly precisely 2.7 seconds before the hull breach. A microscopic shimmer in the shuttle's environmental field, barely a whisper of distortion. Her right hand, seemingly relaxed in her lap, brushed against the quantum encryption device, hidden within the seam of her diplomatic attire. Incoming breach, she whispered to her junior diplomats, Kendra Williams, Miguel Rodriguez, and Takeshi Yamamoto. The words were more a confirmation than a warning. Each of them had undergone extensive crisis management training, but nothing could fully prepare them for an actual hostile interception. The Nix strike team was legendary, a group of mercenaries so sophisticated that entire planetary governments trembled at their reputation. Their entry was a choreographed dance of technological precision. Quantum phase shifters neutralized the shuttle's defensive systems, holographic camouflage masks obscured their approach, and pulse disruptors stood ready to neutralize any potential resistance. What they didn't know was that Dr. Nakamura was no ordinary diplomatic target. As the hull breach completed, 3 armored figures materialized within the shuttle's compact diplomatic compartment. Their exosuits were masterpieces of criminal engineering. Adaptive camouflage, integrated weapon systems, and communication scramblers that could defeat most standard security protocols. Diplomatic vessel, you are now under Nix Consortium control, the lead operative announced, his voice modulated to remove any trace of individual identity. Remain calm and comply with all instructions. Kendra Williams, the youngest of the diplomatic team, made a deliberately clumsy movement. To the untrained eye, it looked like fear-induced panic. To Arya, it was a perfectly executed distraction. The quantum encryption device she had been subtly activating began its work. Small systems around the shuttle started to behave incorrectly. A navigation display flickered. A temperature regulation subroutine developed an unexpected recursive loop. Communication channels began to develop strange, almost sentient interference patterns. The Nix operatives didn't notice immediately. Their confidence was their weakness. They believed themselves to be so far beyond standard technological countermeasures that they couldn't conceive of a threat. Miguel Rodriguez caught Arya's eye. A nearly imperceptible nod passed between them. Their training at the United Planetary Diplomatic Corps was about to be tested in ways no simulation could have predicted. Takeshi's fingers, seemingly relaxed on his datapad, were actually running a complex quantum encryption algorithm. To the Nix operatives, it would look like nothing more than a nervous diplomatic assistant reviewing mission logs. Identify yourselves and prepare for transfer, the lead operative commanded, raising a neural disruptor weapon. What he didn't realize was that the transfer had already begun, but not in any way the Nix Consortium could have anticipated. Dr. Arya Nakamura and her team weren't just hostages. They were the hunters. The United Planetary Council's Emergency Response Center resembled nothing like a traditional war room. Where military strategists might have prepared for kinetic strikes, Ambassador Marcus Rodriguez had assembled a team that looked more like a hyper-specialized think tank. Dr. Elena Chen, the Council's lead quantum communication specialist, manipulated holographic data streams with surgical precision. Her fingers danced across quantum interfaces, each movement creating cascading information networks that would have looked like abstract art to an untrained eye. Beside her, Kai Zhang, an economic warfare expert with a reputation for bloodless decimation of financial systems, was already mapping out the Nix Consortium's economic vulnerabilities. "We're not going to war," Marcus announced to the assembled team. "We're going to dismantle them." The room fell silent. Every person understood the weight of those words. The Nix Consortium had made a critical mistake. They had underestimated humanity's capacity for strategic response. On the primary display, A real-time map of galactic communication networks began to pulse. Each node represented a potential point of diplomatic or economic pressure. Dr. Chen's quantum communication analysis was already identifying subtle interference patterns from the kidnapped diplomatic shuttle, microscopic data transmissions that the Nix would never detect. "Kendra Williams is transmitting," she said quietly. To the untrained ear, it would have sounded like static. To this room, it was a carefully constructed intelligence report. Kai Zhang's fingers flew across his interface. "I'm tracing their financial liquidity. They've got 17 shell corporations across 4 star systems, each designed to look independent. But they're all connected." Marcus Rodriguez studied the holographic display, his mind working several layers deeper than the visual information. The public message would be carefully crafted, calm, measured, suggesting cooperation while simultaneously preparing a multifaceted attack that would make the Nix Consortium's kidnapping look like a child's mistake. A press conference was scheduled. To the outside world, it would appear as a standard diplomatic response. In reality, every word would be a precision instrument, every pause a psychological weapon. In a secure communication channel, Marcus spoke directly to the captured diplomatic team. "We see you," he transmitted. "Continue with the plan." Aboard the Nix vessel, Dr. Aria Nakamura allowed herself the briefest moment of a smile. The operatives surrounding her had no idea that each of their own communication systems was slowly being transformed into a conduit of their own destruction. Kendra Williams accidentally dropped her datapad. As an operative moved to retrieve it, Miguel Rodriguez created a momentary distraction. Takeshi Yamamoto's fingers continued their seemingly random interaction with his own device. In reality, a complex quantum encryption routine that was slowly mapping the entire Nix communication infrastructure. The kidnapping was no longer just an incident. It had become a trap, and the Nix Consortium was about to discover that they were the ones who had been caught. "Prepare the first economic countermeasure," Marcus whispered to Kai Zhang. The silent war had begun. The first strike came not with weapons, but with algorithms. Kai Chen's fingers moved like a concert pianist across quantum-encrypted interfaces, each keystroke a calculated blow against the Nix Consortium's financial infrastructure. The economic warfare team had spent years preparing for a moment like this, a comprehensive takedown that would make traditional sanctions look like playground negotiations. Cryptocurrency channels began to behave like living organisms. Bitcoin, stellar credits, and quantum-encrypted galactic trading currencies developed spontaneous amnesia about the Nix Consortium's accounts. It wasn't just about freezing assets. It was about making those assets cease to exist in the financial ecosystem. "Target acquisition complete," Dr. Aisha Okonkwo muttered, her eyes reflecting multiple holographic displays. Each screen showed a different layer of financial attack: insurance networks, trading platforms, interstellar banking systems. The Nix thought they were untouchable. They were about to learn otherwise. Aboard the kidnapped shuttle, Dr. Aria Nakamura was orchestrating her own economic symphony. Through a quantum encryption device no larger than a standard communication pin, she was feeding critical intelligence back to Earth. Financial nodes, hidden transaction pathways, varied corporate connections. Each piece of information became a weapon. The first Nix financial node collapsed at 1437 Galactic Standard Time. To an outside observer, it would have looked like a minor system glitch. In reality, it was the first domino in a carefully constructed economic demolition. "They won't even know what hit them," Kai Chen said, a rare smile crossing his face. Traditional economic warfare involved sanctions, trade restrictions, diplomatic pressure. What they were doing was something entirely different: a total systemic deconstruction. Insurance companies suddenly discovered decades of fraudulent claims by Nix-affiliated corporations. Trading networks developed inexplicable blockades around their transactions. Banks didn't just refuse Nix transactions. They developed complex algorithmic defenses that made those transactions mathematically impossible. Miguel Rodriguez, one of the captured diplomats, used a seemingly innocent gesture to activate a secondary communication protocol. A data pad accidentally fell, its quantum-encrypted surface transmitting a burst of critical financial intelligence that would take Earth's economic warfare team another step deeper into the Nix consortium's financial maze. Dr. Nakamura watched her captors, noting the first signs of confusion. Communication systems were becoming unreliable. Financial confirmations were failing. The sophisticated mercenaries were about to discover that their greatest weapon, their belief in their own technological superiority, was about to become their fatal weakness. Status report, the lead Nix operative demanded of their financial coordinator. The response was a cascade of error messages, each more cryptic than the last. What the Nix consortium didn't understand was that this wasn't just an economic attack. It was a systematic deconstruction of their entire operational infrastructure. Every financial channel was becoming a potential trap, every transaction a possible point of total system failure. Earth wasn't just fighting back. They were rewriting the entire rules of economic engagement, and they were just getting started. The communication channels of Crossroads Station hummed with an unusual energy. Ambassador Marcus Rodriguez understood that diplomacy was warfare by other means, and today, truth would be his most potent weapon. Holographic displays in diplomatic chambers across multiple star systems began to populate with a meticulously compiled dossier. It wasn't just information. It was a surgical strike of historical accountability. Every crime, every backroom deal, every suppressed atrocity committed by the Nix consortium was about to be laid bare. Dr. Zara Kimura, the United Planetary Council's chief diplomatic historian, had spent years collecting evidence. Hidden records, encrypted communications, testimonies from civilizations long silenced. Each piece of information was a precision-guided missile of diplomatic revelation. First vector prepared, she murmured to Rodriguez, her fingers dancing across quantum-encrypted interfaces. Aboard the kidnapped shuttle, Dr. Aria Nakamura was conducting her own diplomatic offensive. To the Nix operatives, she appeared calm, almost conversational. But every word was a carefully constructed instrument of psychological deconstruction. "You understand," she said to the lead operative, her tone academic and detached, that the consortium's actions against the Velaran colonies were more than just an economic expansion. They were systematic cultural erasure. The operative's micro-expression flickered, barely perceptible, but Nakamura caught it. Doubt. The first crack in their ideological armor. Simultaneously, diplomatic channels across the galaxy began to light up. The United Planetary Council had prepared for this moment with surgical precision. Each communication was a coordinated revelation, targeting specific power structures within the Nix consortium's operational network. On Crossroads Station, diplomatic representatives from previously subjugated civilizations received comprehensive reports. The Arconian delegation, who had suffered under Nix economic oppression for generations, received documentation of financial manipulations that went back 3 centuries. The Quantum Collective of Proxima received communication logs revealing decades of technological suppression. It wasn't just exposure. It was a systematic dismantling of the Nix consortium's legitimacy. Miguel Rodriguez, one of the captured diplomats, used a seemingly innocent gesture to transmit another encrypted message. A data pad accidentally activated, its quantum-encrypted surface sending a burst of critical diplomatic intelligence that would take the exposure campaign another layer deeper. "The truth," Ambassador Rodriguez said to his team, "is our ultimate weapon." Kai Zhang, the economic warfare specialist, watched the diplomatic channels with a predatory focus. Each revelation was synchronized with their economic takedown. As diplomatic credibility collapsed, so would their financial infrastructure. Aboard the shuttle, Nakamura continued her psychological warfare. To the Nix operatives, she was presenting a scholarly dissertation. In reality, she was systematically deconstructing their worldview, revealing the personal and collective costs of their criminal enterprise. The first signs of internal fracture began to appear. Communication between Nix operatives became hesitant. Certainty was being replaced by doubt, confidence by confusion. They had chosen the wrong diplomatic team to kidnap. Humanity was fighting back, and their weapon was nothing more than unvarnished truth. Dr. Zura Okoye's fingers moved like liquid electricity across the quantum interface. The cyber diplomacy team's command center was a symphony of controlled chaos. Holographic displays pulsing with living data streams, communication networks transforming into adaptive, sentient systems. "We're not just defending," she muttered to her team. "We're rewriting the entire concept of technological warfare." The quantum encryption device Dr. Nakamura had activated during the initial kidnapping was no ordinary communication tool. It had become a living intelligence, evolving with each microsecond of interaction. What the Nix consortium believed was a simple diplomatic shuttle's communication system was actually a sophisticated adaptive network that was learning, analyzing, and preparing to strike. Takeshi Yamamoto, one of the captured diplomats, continued his seemingly random interactions with his datapad. To the Nix operatives, it looked like nervous fidgeting. In reality, he was running a complex quantum encryption algorithm that was systematically mapping the entire Nix communication infrastructure. The first signs of systemic infiltration began subtly. Communication channels started to develop unexpected recursive loops. Navigation systems developed microscopic inconsistencies. Temperature regulation subroutines in the Nix vessel began to behave with an almost sentient unpredictability. "Infiltration at 37%, Dr. Okoye announced, her voice calm despite the magnitude of what was happening. Phase 2 initiating. Holographic technologies allowed Dr. Nakamura to exist simultaneously as a prisoner and a digital phantom. Her quantum encryption device was transforming every communication system it touched into a potential vector of attack. The Nix operatives' own technology was being systematically converted into a weapon against them. Miguel Rodriguez accidentally dropped a communication device. As an operative moved to retrieve it, the device released a microscopic quantum entanglement packet, a technological Trojan horse that would continue to propagate through the Nix systems long after the initial contact. "They have no idea," Kendra Williams whispered, her eyes reflecting the complex data streams only she could fully comprehend. The youngest of the diplomatic team was a technological prodigy, her training going far beyond traditional diplomatic preparation. On Earth, Dr. Okoye's team was conducting a symphonic technological assault. Each of the Nix consortium's communication channels was being transformed. Secure networks became labyrinths. Encryption systems developed impossible recursive challenges. What should have been straightforward communication became a nightmare of technological complexity. The lead Nix operative noticed the first significant anomaly when their primary communication system developed an inexplicable feedback loop. A simple status check returned pages of quantum-encrypted nonsense. Navigation systems began to provide conflicting information. Their supposedly impenetrable communication scramblers started to generate random interference patterns. "Status report," the operative demanded. The response was a cascade of error messages, each more cryptic than the last. What the Nix consortium didn't understand was that this wasn't just a technological counterattack. It was a complete reimagining of technological engagement. Humanity wasn't just defending. They were demonstrating a fundamental superiority in adaptive technological warfare. Dr. Nakamura allowed herself the briefest moment of a smile. The hunt was just beginning. The Nix consortium's command vessel hung in the starfield like a wounded predator, unaware it was already dying. Captain Vex, the lead operative of the kidnapping mission, felt the first true tremors of uncertainty. Communication channels were disintegrating. Financial networks were collapsing. And worst of all, the 4 diplomatic hostages seemed increasingly like hunters rather than prey. Dr. Arya Nakamura had been talking for hours. To an untrained observer, it might have seemed like idle conversation. To Vex and his team, it was becoming something far more dangerous. A systematic deconstruction of their entire operational philosophy. "You understand," she said, her voice calm and academic. that the consortium's approach to galactic control is fundamentally flawed, not just ethically, but mathematically. Vex's second-in-command, a veteran operative named Krell, shifted uncomfortably. Something was wrong. The diplomatic team's behavior was becoming increasingly impossible to predict. Kendra Williams, the youngest of the diplomatic team, had been nervously manipulating her communication device. In reality, she was running a complex psychological warfare algorithm that was slowly fragmenting the Nix team's internal communication protocols. Miguel Rodriguez seemed to be mediating a conversation, but his subtle gestures were actually creating microscopic tensions between the Nix operatives. A raised eyebrow here, a carefully timed pause there. Each moment was a precision instrument of psychological manipulation. Takeshi Yamamoto's seemingly random interactions with his datapad were anything but random. He was systematically exposing the internal communication logs, creating doubt and suspicion among the Nix operatives. "Status report," Captain Vex demanded. The response was a cascade of conflicting information. Communication systems were generating nonsensical data. Navigation charts developed impossible geometric inconsistencies. Even the ship's internal environmental systems began to behave strangely. Dr. Nakamura continued her dissertation. Each word was a carefully constructed psychological weapon. "The fundamental error in the consortium's approach," she explained, "is the belief that control can be maintained through fear. Fear is the most unstable form of social control. It requires constant reinforcement and creates inherent systemic weaknesses." Krell, the second-in-command, found himself listening. Really listening. Aboard the United Planetary Council's command center, Ambassador Marcus Rodriguez watched the psychological deconstruction with clinical precision. The kidnapping was no longer just an incident. It had become a comprehensive takedown of an entire criminal infrastructure. Psychological infiltration at 62%, Dr. Elena Chen announced, her fingers dancing across quantum interfaces. The Nix operatives didn't realize it yet, but their own communication systems were being transformed into a distributed network of psychological warfare. Each transmission was becoming a vector of doubt, each secure channel a potential point of internal collapse. Captain Vex looked at Dr. Nakamura. For the first time, he felt something he had never experienced in his decades of criminal operations: uncertainty. The hunt was entering its final phase. The final act began not with violence, but with a single, perfectly timed communication. Dr. Arya Nakamura activated a quantum-encrypted transmission that would reverberate through every communication network in the known galaxy. What had begun as a simple hostage situation was about to become the most comprehensive takedown of a criminal organization in galactic history. Crossroads Station transformed into a living conduit of truth. Holographic displays in diplomatic chambers across multiple star systems flickered to life, simultaneously revealing the complete operational history of the Nix consortium. It wasn't just an exposure, it was a systematic dismantling of an entire criminal infrastructure. Begin primary vector. Ambassador Marcus Rodriguez commanded from Earth's diplomatic command center. The liberated civilizations, those long oppressed by the Nix consortium, received comprehensive documentation of their historical suppression. The Arconian delegation received financial records detailing centuries of economic manipulation. The Quantum Collective of Proxima got communication logs revealing decades of technological subjugation. Aboard the Nix vessel, the kidnapping team was disintegrating from within. Captain Vex watched in horror as his communication systems became conduits of their own destruction. Each encrypted channel revealed another layer of the consortium's criminal operations. Kendra Williams, Miguel Rodriguez, and Takeshi Yamamoto moved with a precision that belied their diplomatic status. They weren't just hostages, they were strategic assets carefully prepared for this exact moment. "The liberation begins now," Dr. Nakamura announced, her voice calm and clinical. The quantum encryption device she had activated during the initial kidnapping was now a full-scale intelligence network. It didn't just transmit information, it strategically distributed it, creating maximum psychological and systemic impact. Diplomatic channels across the galaxy became tribunals. Each communication was a surgical strike, revealing the Nix Consortium's crimes with mathematical precision. Financial networks collapsed. Communication systems became labyrinths of self-incriminating evidence. Captain Vex realized too late that they had never been in control. On Crossroads Station, diplomatic representatives from dozens of civilizations received real-time documentation of their own historical suppression. The Nix Consortium's entire operational model was being dismantled in real time, with each revealed secret creating another cascade of exposure. Total system infiltration complete, Dr. Zara Okoye announced from Earth's Cyber Diplomacy Command Center. The diplomatic team's capture was transforming into the Nix Consortium's ultimate defeat. Every communication, every attempted cover-up, became another nail in their operational coffin. Miguel Rodriguez activated the final communication vector. A seemingly innocent data transfer became a comprehensive exposure of the consortium's leadership structure, revealing names, operations, and decades of criminal activities. "We are not victims," Dr. Nakamura said to the now-broken Nix operatives. "We are the architects of your destruction." The liberation was complete, not through violence, not through military might, but through the most powerful weapon in the universe, unvarnished, mathematically precise truth. The conference hall on Crossroads Station was unlike any diplomatic gathering in galactic history. Representatives from over 40 civilizations sat in a circular arrangement, the traditional hierarchies of power completely dismantled. At the center stood Dr. Aria Nakamura and Ambassador Marcus Rodriguez, not as conquering heroes, but as architects of a new approach to galactic cooperation. "This is not about punishment," Nakamura began, her voice carrying across the quantum-enhanced communication systems. "This is about understanding." The complete exposure of the Nix Consortium had done more than just dismantle a criminal organization. It had revealed the intricate systems of oppression that had governed galactic interactions for centuries. Financial records, communication logs, and historical documents laid bare a complex network of manipulation that had kept multiple civilizations in a state of perpetual subjugation. The Arconian delegation, who had suffered generations of economic suppression, looked at the comprehensive documentation with a mixture of vindication and hope. The quantum collective of Proxima saw their technological innovations, long stolen and suppressed, restored to their rightful context. Kai Zhang, the economic warfare specialist, presented a radical new framework for galactic economic interaction. It wasn't about competition, but about collaborative development. Each civilization's unique strengths would be recognized, protected, and given opportunity to flourish. "We are proposing a fundamental restructuring," Rodriguez explained, "not through force, but through mutual understanding and technological cooperation." The quantum encryption technologies developed during the Nix takedown were now being offered as a shared resource, not as a weapon, but as a tool for transparent, equitable communication. Dr. Zara Okoye unveiled the most revolutionary aspect of their proposal: a new communication protocol that would make large-scale manipulation virtually impossible. Every significant galactic transaction, every diplomatic communication, would be subject to a transparent, quantum-verified verification process. The captured Nix operatives, now turned witnesses, provided critical insights into the systemic failures that had allowed such widespread oppression to exist. Captain Vex, who had once led the kidnapping mission, now sat as a key witness to the transformation. Kendra Williams, Miguel Rodriguez, and Takeshi Yamamoto presented case studies of how diplomatic innovation could replace traditional conflict resolution. Their own kidnapping had become the ultimate demonstration of strategic thinking. "This is not about human superiority," Nakamura emphasized. "This is about collective advancement." The proposed galactic framework was nothing short of revolutionary. It dismantled traditional power structures while providing unprecedented protections for emerging civilizations. Economic systems would be transparent. Communication would be protected. No single entity could accumulate power through manipulation. As the conference progressed, something remarkable happened. The rigid diplomatic protocols began to dissolve. Representatives who had been enemies for generations started to see each other as potential collaborators. The United Planetary Council had done more than just defeat the Nix consortium. They had presented a new model of galactic interaction, one based on transparency, mutual respect, and collaborative potential. "We are not here to rule," Ambassador Rodriguez concluded. "We are here to listen, to understand, to grow together." The hostage situation that had begun as a criminal operation had transformed into the most significant diplomatic revolution in galactic history.